Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Joe Fars, and I'm Vice President here at Red Cloud Securities and Investment Banking. Delighted to be hosting Jim Paterson, Chairman and CEO, as well as Colin Smith, VPX from ValOre Metals today. Ticker is VO on the venture. Jim and his team will be speaking to their Angalac project in Nunavut, Canada, boasting 43 million pounds of high-grade uranium resource. And that's hosted within the LAC 50 trend, which is the highest resource grade outside of Saskatchewan. A lot of opportunity to unlock more value across many already identified targets in the property. With that, Jim, Colin, please tell us your story.
Hey, Joe, great introduction. You covered all the high points, so we'll just fill in some data based on what you said. Angalac Properties in Nunavut territory. The company is ValOre Metals Corp. We used to be called Kivalliq Energy, and we can look up on our website, valoremetals.com. If you go back through all the news releases in the archives, we've got more than a decade of some pretty aggressive exploration up there on the project, and there's a lot of really good information on the site. We'll cover highlights today. As I said, it's on the northwest shores of Hudson Bay in Nunavut territory. We have about 49,000 hectares, which is outlined here in this blue box on the map in the middle of the screen. In particular, we've spent a lot of money and time on Inuit-owned land, which is part of our project. We have a partnership with Nunavut Tungavik Inc., which is an Inuit-owned corporation. And we've identified this area that we call the LAC 50 trend. Within the LAC 50 trend, these orange squiggles represent 43 million pounds. We spent about $55 million drilling off the resources, drilling off targets near to the resources, drilling targets across the project, and basically identifying what we believe is a district here in Nunavut territory for uranium. The majority of the resource drilling here is on the main zone, but we've also identified the western extension and the eastern extension. And then several kilometers to the east, in our last few years of discovery on the project and resource delineation, we drilled off the J4 and the Ray zones. So in aggregate, it's 2.8 million tons at 0.69% to give us 43 million pounds. And as Joe was saying, on a global basis, that's one of the highest grade uranium deposits. And outside of the Athabasca Basin, it's the highest uranium deposit in Canada, currently defined. 335 drill holes to find that resource, almost 60,000 meters for resource drilling alone. And significant drilling was done elsewhere on the project, setting the stage for some upside in future exploration seasons. We had a lot of growth. Basically, every year we went back during these resource drilling years, we would find a new zone and add that zone to the resource category and numbers. So we really had a lot of success. And in addition to that, we've done what most companies haven't done. If they're an explorer, first of all, we have an inferred resource, and secondly, we've done metallurgy on that. So there's several news releases that we have on our site that cover that. The last one being February 27, 2014. And we had a real industry expert, Chuck Edwards, do the work. And he was very pleased with the product that ensued after the metallurgy. There were high recovery rates and great leach kinetics. And so we really just positions this project ahead of many others out there because we have identified the resources, we've done significant drilling, and we've answered one of the really important questions, which is, can you get the stuff out of the rocks? In this case, we've proven that, in fact, this is a highly attractive yellow cake product. I'll turn it over now to Colin Smith to take us the next step.
Thank you, Jim. And hi, everybody. Excited to present to you Angalac today. What I'll do now is just take you through a few slides explaining our exploration methodology at Angalac. So how did we build the current resource at LAC 50? And how are we looking to expedite the pre-resource targets to resource stage? So the next few slides will just take you through that. First and foremost, it's a big land position. As Jim said, it's almost 50,000 hectares. So geophysics is an excellent way to hone in on prospective terrain. Now, in terms of groundwork, ground VLF-EM works really well to delineate the uranium-rich structures. It actually picks up on the sulfide content. And so what you end up seeing are these long linear, in the scale of tens of kilometers, geophysical anomalies that define these uranium-rich structures. Now, moving on to the next slide, how do we further vet these target areas, these linear structures, which, as I said, are tens of kilometers in length, while perpendicular soils. So enzyme leach soils, conventional soils, MMI soils have proven very effective at pinpointing the best parts of these uranium-rich structures. And the geological and structural orientation of the subbasin and the basin margin is very well understood. So in terms of, once the uranium anomaly in soils is identified, we step down dip and drill. And that's what we're seeing in the next panel here, is a representation of, if you want to switch to the next slide, Jim, stepping down dip and drilling off these targets. And ultimately, that's how we ended up with the LAC 50 resource. Again, 43 million pounds. Jim, if you switch to the next slide, we can show all panels together now. Mm-hmm. And there we go. And so I'll direct your attention to the bottom panel there. And what you're seeing is the LAC 50 trend resource, the resource solid in purple there. And the red shapes you're seeing, those are actually pre-resource targets in which we've drilled. We've had uranium intercepts, high-grade uranium intercepts. However, there's not enough drill density to actually incorporate into the inferred resource. So going forward, and as we engage in some district-wide targeting and new data sets this year, the MLs, the HOTS, pulse, spark, blaze, flares, and there's a myriad of other targets property-wide, even on the other side of the subbasin, in which we have drill intercepts. We know there's uranium in them. We just need to drill them more to consider for the resource. So as I said before, this year we're going to be engaging in getting some new data. We're also going to be reprocessing the extensive data in which we have already. So that's almost 90,000 meters of drilling, property-wide geophysics, both airborne and ground. And in particular, the new data set that we are excited to get is property-wide worldview spectral data. So it's something that we've incorporated into our PGE project in Brazil. It's led to some direct drilling discoveries last year. And in combination with reprocessed geophysics, it can be extremely effective and compelling targeting tool, just those two data sets alone. So the next few slides will just take you through the existing data sets from, in this slide here, a geochemical perspective. So the drill holes are in black dots, rock samples in red squares, and soils are in red dots with the anomalies delineated by orange or yellow shapes. As you can see, most of the work and the drilling point of view has been done at LAC 50. However, there's drill confirmed targets throughout the district, okay? And there's strong, high-grade uranium in rock samples district-wide as well. We're going to be re-looking at this data. We're going to be re-looking at the downhole data in particular and looking for pathfinders, looking for different ratios that we can use to better constrain our district-wide targeting. Now, from a geophysicals perspective, as I said before, we have district-wide geochem or geophys. What you're seeing here is the district-wide airborne. We have district-wide radiometrics as well as EM. And as referenced before in the targeting methodology slides, the ground VLF-EM has proven extremely effective at drill targeting. And that's what you're seeing Jim highlight there is the more patchwork ground surveys. And so we're going to be looking at all that data from the raw data up, reprocessing it. And ultimately, in the next slide, you'll see the composite of both the geochem and the geophys. This is all being covered with worldview data as well. So again, it's something that's proven effective and very efficient at Pedra Branca in vetting large pieces of land and leading directly to drilling discoveries. So we're going to use this to not only hopefully expand the LAC 50 resource, but bring some of these pre-resource targets into inferred category.
And I just want to note, Colin, the scale. So if you look at the bottom of the slide, you see 42 kilometers from one side to the other, and think about this whole thing wrapping around the basin. So we've got perspective terrain and some real scale to it.
Yeah, and the kind of folded contact of the sub-basin there is about 55 kilometers in length. So as Jim said, this is a huge piece of land with smoke all over it, and we're excited to get more data for it. So
great, thanks, Colin. So just to wrap up here, we have shown you a little bit about the work that we've done over the last few years on the project in terms of aggressive resource delineation, drilling, metallurgy, and that puts us in league with a few other companies that are Canadian listed that have resources and have done metallurgy. And to that effect, I would say that we are undervalued, and perhaps it was our inactivity over the last few years from a uranium front that led us to be unloved, so to speak. But on a per pound of the ground basis, ValOre trades at a discount. Not to mention the fact that we have over 1 million ounces in a palladium project in northeastern Brazil. So we're truly undervalued from just a pure asset perspective. And then when it comes to upside, I would argue that if you look over at this, you'll see that we're undervalued as well. These are some of the exploration companies out there that don't actually have resources other than, I did note that Sky Harbor has a small resource. Kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. But for the most part, these aren't large, substantial resources, and we're trading in line with those explorcos. And again, we weren't pounding the drum the last few years, but we're just going to start now in terms of the exploration upside that we have on our project. So from a pure resource pound in the ground perspective, we're undervalued. And we've got a great project with some real growth potential. From an exploration perspective, I think I would argue we're undervalued as well in terms of our project size. And as Colin mentioned, there's smoke all around the sub-basin. We've had some really great success in terms of collection of rock samples and drilling to identify these discoveries that can add over time to the resource base. And this particular slide is on our website if you'd like to go through it in detail. So that takes us to the end. That was our camp there on the shores of Nutak Lake in Nunavut territory. And I see Joe Farr's beautiful face back. So I think it's time for questions.
Yeah, that's perfect, guys. Appreciate that. Great presentation. So just want to get through a couple of questions here. You mentioned on one of the slides some news flow to be expected, some reprocessing of data, geochem and geophysics. So just in terms of how investors could look at these results, maybe just walking us through what to look for in the context of some of the existing exploration that's already been had.
Yeah, I guess that this is a very low cost program, and less than $250,000 all told, even with staff time. But you got to recognize that we have done almost 90,000 meters of drilling. It's not like we're not doing work on the project. We have an existing resource. We've done metallurgy. We've drilled targets, like for example, all these ones that just aren't in the resource, but they've been drilled. They're structures that look exactly the same in many respects to the trend that hosts the LAC 50 resources. So to look at it, I think what you're going to see, really, the end result will be a brand new understanding of the upside in this project, and I think it's going to be very significant, and it stretches not only from the LAC 50 trend, but all the way over here to Dipole and Rib, which is across the project almost 30 kilometers away, where in the case of Dipole, we've drilled and we've hit uranium in several holes in a target that needs to be drilled more. So just a greater understanding of upside, I think, really, and that's what people can expect, and all this stuff will happen over the next few months. So by the end of the summer, I would think we'd be coming to market with a really clear picture of the outcome of this work.
Great. Maybe some commentary on working in Nunavut. You mentioned one of the alliances you have with the First Nations group, but maybe expand on the work environment, access. I think some of our viewers may not be aware just of the ease of exploring in this neck of the woods and Nunavut in particular.
Well, if they don't have a lot of experience, the shocker that I might give them is there are no roads outside of any town or smaller community in Nunavut territory. They have some roads that go to airports and hunting roads and so forth, but there aren't paved roads to these projects. So the way that we've gotten around it in the past has been quite innovative. The temperatures in the territory of Nunavut are, let's just say, not that balmy in the winter, and lakes freeze. So we've used them as international airports, where we've landed C-130 Hercules aircraft on the ice strip in front of our camp. We take advantage of the fact that when the winter is there, and since there aren't trees in the Arctic, it's very easy to move stuff around in the snow and the ice. And then in the summer, you use choppers to get around, or ATVs. You use heli-supported drill programs. So you'll move the drill rigs with choppers from spot location to location. So we effectively would have 3 rigs running at the height of the exploration campaign that we had in 2012. We had almost 60 people in our camp that you saw that picture, that last picture. And we got all those people in there for the most part, all the equipment in the winter.
Perfect. And last question here came in just a second ago, just on Hatch Lake and Genesis. Any plans there on further advancing or exploring any of those properties?
No, not this season.
Okay. Yeah, maybe just going back to your valuation slide, obviously you guys are clearly undervalued relative to, the group in the basin. Maybe just, commenting on that, where you feel the valuation gap is, what needs to be demonstrated to clearly showcase the value here. Because obviously 43 million pounds at such a high grade is clearly a testament to the project, but just your thoughts on valuation.
Well, I think that in terms of exploration companies, not ISR development companies, which would be a completely different animal, or let's say African developers or producers, I think in Canada, the companies that are involved with uranium exploration get a premium if they're in Saskatchewan. And that in terms of uranium provinces of the world, I think Saskatchewan is superior to all others. So there's a bit of a fight there explaining the jurisdiction of Nunavut to people that may not be comfortable or have an understanding of it. I will say that we have over the years lots of spectacular experiences with Nunavut territory, from the government to our partners at NTI. We've had a lot of exploration upside there and success. And I think one of the things is, if you're a group that knows how to operate in Nunavut, you really, you don't have a lot of competition, and the target size is pretty massive. So if properly handled and prudently managed, you're really by yourself there, shooting for giants, or, elephant hunting. And some of these deposit potential sizes can be quite significant. So we have a district, and it's just our job to tell people it's not 43 million pounds. That's the initial resource calculation that we have, but we've got upside across the project over 30 kilometers, or as Colin was saying, 55 kilometers around the basin. That would be highly sought after in Saskatchewan. It wouldn't actually be available, that's for sure.
Last question, guys, just came in last minute here. Any plans for an OTC listing?
I think if we're pushed into that, that will probably happen sooner rather than later. I think that's the way things are going, that we'll have to do that to communicate better with and interact better with our U.S. shareholders. But it isn't something that we've finalized as of yet.
Great. Well, guys, I really appreciate the time. We're just coming up to the 20-minute mark here, so appreciate that, and thanks for presenting.